Hey, what's up, everyone? So this video is a response to fellow brother by the name of Michael Johnson. He wrote, "I watched your entire video, and it would be great to see your work up close. The question I had throughout the entire video is how would your numbers work if you took into account the actual time that Israel spent in captivity in Egypt, opposed to general belief of 400 years? How would that alter the 165 missing years?" And then he gives an example of, well, not an example, but he shares his research and how he verified that Israel had spent 210 years in Egypt, according to his reading of Jasher, and his comparison of what we find in the account of Exodus and the book of Genesis. Okay, and then he concludes saying that 400 minus 210 years is 190. 190 minus 165 is 25 years. And he asks, or then he says, if my thinking is correct, instead of a discrepancy of 165 years, we now have a discrepancy of just 25. So, yeah, his math is correct, and it would seem that way if indeed, um, you know, we only count those 210 years, okay, as opposed to the whole 400 or the 430 years. However, it's important that we look at the sources here. And again, our main scriptures are based off of they're based off of the Masoretic text, which was written during the medieval ages. And before that, the very first translation was actually done by the 72 Hebrew elders, which gave birth to the story of the Septuagint, which we find in the letter of Aristeas as the main source text for that story. We also find that in the writings of Saint Epiphanes, and Eusebius briefly touches that on that as well, as does Saint Jerome or Saint Hieronymus. Okay, but anyways, if we look at our modern Bibles, it'll only say that the time that Israel spent sojourning, they only include the time in Egypt. So, show you guys that briefly here. Oops. Okay, so here in chapter 12 of Exodus, verse 40 to 41, we read, "Now the time that the sons of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years, and at the end of 430 years, to the very day, all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt." Okay, so right there, it's like, okay, it says 430, but yet when we add up the numbers, as I will show you guys here. Now, this here is my blog. It's on christianforums.com, and there's my username, Humble Penny, and that is the name of my blog, Finding the True Year of Creation in Our Current Year. Now, I put a lot of the detail of my work on here. I split it into two series. The last one is Hiding the Messiah, Falsification of Genesis 5 and 11, where I compare and contrast the chronologies of Genesis 5 and 11 between the Samaritan Pentateuch, Masoretic texts, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Josephus, and the Septuagint. Okay, And then the first series is titled Biblical Chronology from Adam to the End of the World. And I basically go through starting from Genesis all the way to Revelation, and I account for the 7,000 years of recorded history that God has set for the world and everything in it to exist. Now, in relation to this video and Michael Johnson's inquiry, we will turn to this blog post here, Biblical Chronology from Adam to the End of the World, 3919 Anno Mundi, Abraham to Moses. So right away, as you could see, there are two different ways you can count this. So one way is beginning from the 5th year of Isaac, okay? That is God's reckoning, so he counts the 400 years starting from there. Now, Moses begins his reckoning from the 75th year of Abraham. And, you guys can pause the video here and you can tally up the numbers for yourselves, okay? And then I have these little notes under at the bottom, okay, that give more detail as to why I use those numbers. Now, the one that's a bit tricky to understand, that took a little bit of work to decipher, was figuring out the age of Levi when he entered into Canaan. So on note 7, I put that Joseph died at 110 years old in the 116th year of Levi, seeing that Levi was the third child of Jacob and Joseph was the 12th child, because Dinah was the sister of Levi and the 11th child of Jacob. He would have been 6 years old at Joseph's birth, 45 years old when he entered Egypt and begat Kohath, and 116 years old when Kohath begat Amram in his 71st year. Okay? So, we're not given a lot of detail as to the exact timing of the births of each of Jacob's children. We are told their birth order, okay? But otherwise, from the narrative, it sounds like, Jacob's 4 wives all had healthy pregnancies. So, assuming a 9-month pregnancy for 13 children, that's a total of 117 months. Divide that by 12 months, it gives us 9.75 years. Now, convert this decimal, multiply it by 12, so we're talking about 9 years and 9 months total, okay? And since we know that Jacob had Joseph when he was 91 years old, okay, 9 months later, that would make Jacob 91 and then 92 years old, okay? So that would mean Benjamin would be the 13th child of Jacob, who would be born in his 92nd year. Now we simply take 92 and we subtract 9.75 from it, okay? So Jacob is 82 years old, and if we want to convert that decimal point, multiply it by 12, he's 82 years old, 82 years and 3 months old, okay? I mean, if you want to be that precise. But anyways, so again, Levi is the third child. So 3 times 9, 27 months. Divide that by 12, 2.25 plus 82.25. Okay, Jacob is now 84 years and 6 months old when Levi is born. And we already went over the fact that Joseph is the 12th child. So that means since Levi is the third, okay, 9 children later, Joseph is born. So that means 9 children times 9 months are 81 months. Divide that by 12. And that gives you the age of Levi. So Levi is 6 years old, 6 years and 9 months old. Okay, so 84.5. Okay, this is the age of Jacob when Levi is born, and then we add the 6.75 years. So there you go. Jacob is 91 years and 3 months old at the birth of Joseph. Okay, and another way we can prove this is I put here on this note above in number 6. Joseph was 17 years old when he was sold into slavery, served in Potiphar's house for 1 year, and was in prison for 12 years. And 7 years of plenty and 2 years of famine passed when he saw his father Jacob and the rest of his family in Egypt. And in note 5 just above, Jacob entered into Egypt with his family at 130 years old in the 39th year of Joseph. And we find that clearly in Scripture. And we turn to Genesis, I believe it is 46. Okay. So here there's the descendants. Here. Genesis 47, verses 8 to 9. Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many years have you lived?" So Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my sojourning are 130. Okay, so that is how old Jacob is. Now, as far as figuring out the years of Joseph, we have to go back a little bit. So I think, let's see, we start in chapter 41. No, it's earlier. Okay, so in Genesis 37, verse 2, we read, "These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth." Okay, so during this time is when Joseph had his dream and he tells it to his brothers and they end up hating it for him. So he's 17. Okay, he's sold into slavery. Now, Joseph is in prison, and we're not told what age he was when he served in Potiphar's or we aren't told what age he was or how long he served in Potiphar's house, and we aren't told how old he was when he was thrown into prison. Okay, however, here in chapter 41 of Genesis, verse 1, we see, "Now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile." So as you guys know, this is the famous story of Pharaoh dreaming of the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine, and Joseph interprets it for him. Okay, so he does all that, and then in verse 46 we read, "Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt." All right, and Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, the land brought forth abundantly. Okay, so now he's 37 years old. His brothers come to Egypt. All right, and then finally he reveals himself to his brothers in Genesis 45. And we read here in verse 6, "For the famine has been in these land these 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting." Okay, so right there, Joseph is 39 years old. Okay, so let's run the numbers. He's 17 when he has the dream, and he's sold into bondage in Egypt by his brothers. Okay, and then he's released when he's 30 years old. So if we add 13 years, that brings us to his 30th year. Okay, so we also read that Pharaoh had his dream 2 years after 2 years had passed. That means if we subtract 2 years, Joseph had interpreted the dream of the butler and the baker when he was 28, and they forgot about him. And the butler, when he was released from prison, forgot about Joseph for 2 whole years. Okay? 2 years later, Pharaoh has his dream. Then the butler remembers Joseph and says, "Hey, there's this guy who interpreted my dream, and that's why I'm standing here before you today." And so, I already showed you guys those passages there. And then Joseph is appointed head and second ruler in Egypt. He works for the 7 years of plenty. And when he reveals himself to his brothers, they are in the second year of the famine. So 39 years. So Joseph is 39 years old. Okay? That means that when Joseph was sold into slavery, he spent no more than 1 year serving in Potiphar's house and no more than 12 years, or I should say no less than 12 years in prison. Okay? And then you add 7 years of plenty, 2 years of famine with 5 left to go. He's 39, okay? And at that same time, after he reveals himself, his brothers go back and tell Jacob, their father, about Joseph being alive still. Jacob comes down when he's 130. So 130 minus 39. Joseph is born in the 91st year of Jacob. And we already prove the numbers behind that by, looking at the 9-month pregnancies of all his 13 children. Okay? So that pretty much settles that. Now, as Michael Johnson, pointed out, I want to reckon these years. So let's start from the 75th year of Abraham, okay? So Abraham is 75 years old, right? Then you count 25 years, Isaac is born. Then you count 60 when Isaac gave birth to Jacob and Esau. And then the 91 years when Joseph was born by Jacob. And then 39 years, okay? That's when Jacob enters into Egypt and sees his son Joseph. Okay, so the total time that the Hebrews spent in Canaan were 215 years, as the numbers show. Now, Jacob died in his 147th year. Okay, so now 39 years plus 17 makes Joseph 56. Okay, and 54 years later, Joseph would die at 110 years old. So 17 plus 54, and then we add 43 years, and then 21, and then we add the 80th year of Moses. Okay, so now the Israelites have spent 215 years and not 430 in Egypt. So we have to sort out this discrepancy, okay? Because, clearly 215 in Canaan plus the 215 in Egypt give us the 430. So the numbers, there's nothing wrong with the numbers, but there's something wrong with the text, because our current Bibles only include their sojourning in Egypt and not Canaan. However, when we look at the Septuagint text, this is not what I wanted here. Okay, this is what I wanted. So in the Septuagint version of Exodus chapter 12, beginning in verse 40, okay, we read this: "And the sojourning of the children of Israel, while they sojourn in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, was 430 years. And it came to pass, after the 430 years, all the forces of the Lord came forth out of the land of Egypt by night." So clearly the Septuagint includes their sojourning in the land of Canaan and the land of Egypt. Okay? And I think it's also important if we look at God's word to Abraham. So let's just type in 400 years. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Okay, so here in the Septuagint version of Genesis 15, verse 13, we read, "And it was said to Abram, Thou shalt surely know that thy seed shall be a sojourner in a land not their," oh, it looks like the misspelling, "not their own, and they shall enslave them and afflict them and humble them 400 years. And the nation whomsoever they shall serve I will judge, and after this they will come forth hither with much property." Okay? But thou shalt depart to thy fathers in peace, nourish in a good old age, and in the fourth generation they shall return hither, for the sins of the Amorites are not yet filled up, even until now. So, here, God's prophecy to Abram includes their sojourning in the land of Canaan and Egypt. Okay? Because they're sojourning in Canaan, it's a land not their own, and they're also sojourning in Egypt, it's also a land not their own. Okay? Now there's a comma, and it says, "And they shall enslave them and afflict them and humble them 400 years." Okay? So clearly here, you know, unless this is another error by the scribes, which there's no indication that it is, God is including, in a very dark way, he's including the sojourning of the children of Egypt, or the children of Egypt, the children of Israel in the land of Canaan and Egypt within this 400-year time span. Okay? All we have to do is just add up the numbers and look at the proper translation. So, as I showed you guys before this passage, the Septuagint includes the sojourning of the children of Israel in Canaan and Egypt. And then when we also read of when we read from the works of Josephus in his Antiquity of the Jews. Okay, let me just show you how I got there. So, Antiquity of the Jews, it's going to be Book 2, Chapter 15. Okay? And it's going to be here in verse 2. So, we read, "They left Egypt in the month Xanthicus on the 15th day of the lunar month, 430 years after our forefather Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only after Jacob removed into Egypt. It was the 80th year of the age of Moses, and of that of Aaron 3 more." And I should also type in 400 years here. So 400, let me add years. So we can see what Josephus says when he recounts the story of Abraham. Okay, so here in chapter 10, okay, verse 3, it says, okay, "And after which he built this altar where the birds of prey flew about as desirous of blood. A divine voice came to him, declaring that their neighbors would be grievous to his posterity, when they should be in Egypt for 400 years, during which time they should be afflicted, but afterwards should overcome their enemies, should conquer the Canaanites in war and possess themselves of their land. So, I think that's also, now that I go over this, I think this is like when God tells Abraham originally that the sin of the Amorites is not yet full. Um, it would seem that is a key part that is overlooked as well, but Josephus helps to bring out over here the fact that that prophecy is basically saying that at the end of 400 years, they're going to be coming out of Egypt, okay? Not that they would spend their whole time in Egypt. So, when we look at the Septuagint, which again history shows is the first translation of the Hebrew scriptures, we see that the sojourning of Canaan and Egypt are preserved in that account. And we also see that Josephus is following the same account as well. Okay, if he saw a problem, he would have made it clear. But obviously there was no problem. Why? Because the translation of the Septuagint was done by the hand of 72 of the elders of the Hebrews during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, okay, around 284 BC. But in the end, we see that the discrepancy has been cleared up, and this doesn't actually affect the missing 166 years or alter any of that. But I think there was something else I kind of wanted to highlight here, or maybe not. So in regards, why is that glitching? What in the world is going on? Okay, hold on. Let me close that. All right. Let me try and just reopen. That is so weird. It's doing that. Okay, so it looks like it improved itself. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Huh. Okay, that's weird. All right, so anyways, I guess we could quickly reckon the years of Levi. So, why is this thing doing that? Okay. So, Levi is 6 years old when Joseph is born, right? And then add 17 years, and then add the well, let's just add the 39 years. So he's 45 when he enters into Egypt, okay? And then he's 62 when Jacob dies. And then he's 116 years old when Joseph dies, okay, at 110. And then during this time, he dies in the 92nd year of his son Kohath. Okay, and then Kohath, okay, 43 years later, okay, So Kohath is 92 plus 43. Okay, that means that Moses' father. What in the world is up with this? Okay. Then Amram, Moses' father, is born. Okay. Or no, excuse me. Amram is 64 years old uh, when he has Moses. Okay. And then Kohath dies in Moses' second year, which is also the 66th year of uh, of Amram. Okay. Now, why is this important here? Well, Exodus gives us the age of Levi, Kohath, and Amram. Okay. Let's go to Exodus, and I think it's in 11. Okay. No. Okay, so here in Exodus chapter 6, it lists the ancestors of Moses and Aaron. So, and starting in verse 14, these are the heads of their fathers' households. The sons of Reuben, Israel's firstborn, Hanok and Palu, Hezron and Carmi. These are the families of Reuben. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, and Ohad, and Jakin, and Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. These are the families of Simeon. These are the names of the sons of Levi according to their generations, Gershon, and Kohath, and Merari. And the length of Levi's life was 137 years. The sons of Gershon, Libni, and Shimei, according to their families. The sons of Kohath, Amram, and Izhar, and Hebron, and Uziel. And the length of Kohath's life was 133 years. The sons of Merari, Mali, and Mushi, these are the families of the Levites according to their generations. Amram married his father's sister Jochebed, and she bore him Aaron and Moses, and the length of Amram's life was 137 years. Okay, and then it says, the sons of Uziel, Mishael, and Elzaphan, and Zithri. Aaron married Elisheba, the daughter of Aminadab, the sister of Nahshon, and she bore him Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. The sons of Korah, Asir and Elkanah and Abisaiah. These are the families of the Korahites. Aaron's son Eleazar married one of the daughters of Putiel, and she bore him Phinehas. These are the heads of the fathers' households of the Levites according to their families. It was the same Aaron and Moses to whom the Lord said, bring out the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their hosts. Okay? So it gives their whole genealogy pretty much. And the key years here to highlight are the life of Levi, which is 137, and then the length of Kohath's life, which is 133, and then Amram's life, which is 137. So I think in my blog post I accidentally mixed up the lifespan of Kohath and Amram. So yeah, I think I did do that because Kohath died at 133. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so that was a slight mistake on my part, but nonetheless, you guys can see how I arrived at these figures, and that they do add up to what we find in Scripture when we take the age of the ancestors of Moses and Aaron into account and correlate it with their ages, okay, when they freed Israel. So that pretty much answers all of that. You know, if any of you guys have any further questions about what I've put here, again, feel free to comment and I will answer you guys. But thanks, Mike, for posting your question, and I hope that I was able to thoroughly answer it here and show my work. But, anyways, guys, shalom.